So this final instructional video is going to review some of the different responses and management methods that have been deployed globally. Following on from this, will be the opportunity for you guys to really involve yourself with your own research and starting to kind of take your own flavor and your own unique kind of perspective and view of this crisis. So I want to start with this picture that's been shared within the BBC, actually, showing the Italian flag with the quote, "Everything is going to be fine." I think that sort of has summed up a lot of people's, a lot of society's kind of response to this. There really has been a big pulling together. However, the government and the political responses has been kind of quite varied, and this has been something that's been quite widely commented on in both kind of national and global press. And there's a lot of geographers we can kind of glean into countries' cultures and ideologies from those different responses and methods. To help you guys out, I have produced a brief kind of summary table of the different responses and management methods that potentially have been used. This is available for you to download from the website as well as via the slides. And one of the things you should probably start off by doing is just trying to think about kind of one or two pros and cons of each of these different measures that we've seen or that is kind of been available. So lots of them you'll be familiar with, things like social distancing, self-isolating testing, the lockdown, face masks, curfew, travel bans and restrictions, the kind of economic financial support. And some of them may be things that we are hoping for, or that may kind of come into use here in the UK, or have been kind of more used in other countries, such as compulsory phone apps, recording your GPS and your vital kind of bodily indicators, kind of stricter police powers, such as the ability to raid homes or kind of place people under house arrest without judges' written warrants, and also some of the ideas that were kind of used a lot at the beginning of this in the UK, certainly with the herd immunity, and the ideas around kind of where we could be at with different vaccinations. So that's there for you guys to have a look at, but we'll focus on here for kind of different national responses. So here we've got just a real brief look at some of the different kind of countries that have been kind of key and affected by this. We can see, even within this small sample size, a real range of strategies deployed. Italy and Spain enforcing this full lockdown. No one's allowed to leave the house, using drones and CCTV surveillance to kind of monitor that. We also saw that in China, where roadblocks and the police were used, including the army. We've seen countries like South Korea as stating as themselves as a democracy and asking people to self-isolate and to self-quarantine if they have the symptoms, and having a quite high level of trust, but also requiring those very same people who are self-isolating to have an app that alerts the government if they leave their house. So we can sort of see, with one hand, stating a very kind of democratic approach, empowering, and on the other, a quite kind of authoritarian kind of police state of kind of surveillance. I've seen widely reported on this $2 trillion financial package in the UK, a kind of capitalist country that is trying to really minimize the impact on its economy. Likewise in the UK, likewise in the UK, we've seen this $350 billion package announced by the Treasury to help minimize the impacts on the UK's economy. And all of these are things that you may wish to kind of delve into a little bit more deeply and become kind of central to your individual research projects. So where we've got a kind of a bit of a breakdown, here we can see again a difference in testing. Some of it was alluded to in the previous video. This was shared by Robert Peston, the ITV political correspondent, on Twitter, and the links there. On the 17th of April, this was reported as the league table for COVID testing. And we can see there Iceland at the top has already tested almost 12% of its total population. The UAE doing very well in the testing themselves. But again, with terms of total population, it does vary by the country's size. And the UK way down there with a kind of different approach to its testing and a much smaller number of tests carried out. And reasons why that might be the case is again something that you may wish to kind of explore as part of your research. So finally, as a geographer, why might we be seeing these different approaches? And we touched on this. This tells us a lot. How do we understand about kind of using this data to think about national culture and ideology of the country? So the reasons we see these different approaches, it could be due to the severity of the impact in that particular place. So a country that has much more severe impact, someone like Italy, the US, is going to need to do more testing of even of those people who are suspected, but a country with a lower or less negative impact. But also the how strict those government measures are tell us a little bit about how they think the country's going to respond. It's very difficult. There's been talk about the UK's response being maybe not strict enough in some circles. However, the government have come out and said, well, they want it to be a realistic, and I think this is going to be something that is lasting for maybe a number of months. So enforcing a full lockdown, as we've seen in Italy and Spain, whilst that may well subdue it, it may lead to some things like a second spike in the virus, but it also may not be enforceable. If they have hundreds and thousands of people breaking this, then there's almost no point enforcing it in the first place. And how it kind of questions the idea of democracy, of people's kind of individual freedoms and liberties. And that kind of links in, again, tells us potentially something about the population and their obedience and compliance. We've seen in countries like South Korea and China a reported much higher level of obedience and compliance than maybe we're seeing in the UK. Although again, we've got to kind of caveat that with this idea that what we're hearing is maybe less reliable than what we're seeing in the UK. Another reason for the difference in approach could be due to the different technology available, the different amount of testing, tests, and reactive agency. There's been reports of presidents ringing up and bribing and trying to get close with pharmaceutical companies in order to get hold of this. There's been talk about the availability to get testing kits as part of a global market. With this idea of importing produce and importing products, stuff isn't made to the same extent as it used to be within countries. So we've become much more reliant on other countries to sell us those products in times of crisis. Then we're at their mercy to some extent over whether they sell to us or sell to someone else who's offering potentially more money or a bigger contract. In the last video, we touched on this idea of the balance of power, whether it was kind of centrally held and was much slower, or it was more devolved parliament and government system that allowed people to make kind of more agile decisions. And we also touched on these other two ideas of the healthcare system's abilities and effectiveness, as well as the economic structure and resources available to a country, which heavily impacts on its ability to provide those kind of economic and financial rescue packages. So that really kind of concludes this final video lesson on why we're seeing different responses in countries. The last thing I want to share with you as part of this, however, is some research available to you again through the website from the University of Cambridge. This was carried out at the end of March on the countries here: Austria, Germany, Spain, Italy, Mexico, the UK, and the United States. And they asked people a series of questions. I've just picked a few for you, and they took a sample size of 700 per country. And we can see here that generally, this is something that all the countries reported have been very worried about. However, there's much more discrepancy in how people feel a country and how effective they feel that the politicians are dealing with this. We can see in the US that the majority feel the politicians are dealing with this very effectively, whereas in Spain and the UK, a smaller number. Although within the US again, it's quite sort of bipolar, and actually, very small number in America feel they deal with it effectively. Much higher number, I think it's very ineffective. Sorry, correction there. And we can see in the UK, again, fairly kind of even across the board, a real spread, and real shows maybe a difference of opinion within the UK about the government's response to this, potentially highlighting some of the inequalities that you could choose to have as central to your research projects. And then there's some more data. It goes on. So I guess thank you for listening to this final video lesson. I hope you found that informative. And from here, I hope that gives you a really good grounding on starting your own individual research projects. Thanks for listening.